Welcome back, Mrs. Johnston. We are on Unit 10, Colonial Towns and Townspeople. Today is Lesson 10, the last lesson in this unit. Our story is called Stone Soup. Do you know what a soldier is? Like today, sometimes long ago, people in one state or country went to war with people from another state or country. During colonial times, there were several wars, but also time of peace. Soldiers during colonial times were often poor because the government couldn't always pay them. Soldiers were injured in war and had to walk many miles to find help or get home. Sometimes, in the confusion of battle, soldiers got separated from their army and had to walk many miles to find their fellow soldiers again. Soldiers had to rely on townspeople for food and supplies as they made their way back to the battlefront or back home. You are going to hear a story today about some soldiers long ago who came to a town looking for food. If you would have had a soldier come to your door looking for food, would you give food to the soldiers? Some of you might have said yes. Some might have said no. If you said yes, why would you give the soldiers food? Did you respond with things like, that was the kind thing to do? It made you feel you could help in some way? If you said no, why did you say no? Did you say no because you thought the soldiers were mean? Maybe because you didn't know who the soldiers were? Either response is okay because that is how you feel about the question. Listen carefully to how the tradespeople reacted to the soldiers. 3 soldiers, Henry, George, and Lucas, were marching home from the war. They had been marching for many days, and they expected to march many more before they finally made it home. They were cold and tired, but most of all, they were hungry. "Look, just over those trees," Henry said, pointing. "I see a church steeple. There must be a town over there. Perhaps the good people will offer us some food." "Good idea," said George. "Let's go," said Lucas. The 3 soldiers marched toward the town, holding their stomachs and hanging their heads because they were so hungry they didn't know it. But a little girl saw them coming. She turned and ran to the blacksmith's shop. She banged on his door. What does a blacksmith do? works with iron or metal? Blacksmith, blacksmith, she said. 3 soldiers are coming. They look hungry. We must offer them food. The blacksmith didn't turn his head. He continued pounding on the big iron pot he was making. I have no time to be offering food to hungry soldiers. I must get this pot finished, or I will not get paid. If I do not get paid, I cannot buy food, and my family and I will be hungrier than those soldiers. If you say so, said the girl. Then she ran to the carpenter's shop and banged on the door. What does a carpenter do? Did you remember they work with wood and build things? Carpenter, carpenter, she said. 3 soldiers are coming. They look hungry. We must offer them food. The carpenter didn't turn his head. He continued staring at the level he had just placed on top of a table. A level is a tool used to measure if something is straight and even. Hungry soldiers, he said, without much sympathy. The carpenter did not feel sorry for the soldiers. I have no time to be offering food to 3 hungry soldiers. I must get this table done, or I will not get paid, and then I will not have enough food to feed my family. If you say so, said the girl. Then she turned and banged on the baker's door. What does a baker do? A baker bakes goods, makes things like bread and cookies. Baker, baker, she said. 3 soldiers are coming. They look hungry. We must offer them food. The baker didn't turn his head. He continued pulling fresh loaves of bread out of his oven. He said. I suppose you think I'm going to give those 3 soldiers some of my fresh bread. I will sell it to them, but I will not give it away for nothing. I must eat too, you know. The girl went from shop to shop to shop. She asked everyone in town if they could feed 3 hungry soldiers, but they all were too busy doing their own jobs to offer any help. They told the girl that they did not have enough to feed their own families, let alone the 3 soldiers. Finally, Henry, George, and Lucas stumbled into the town square. They were colder, more tired, and hungrier than ever. They looked around. Nobody had come to see them. Hello, said the girl who had been watching the soldiers from across the town square. The 3 soldiers turned. Ah, said Lucas. Are you the welcoming committee? Lucas is making a joke because a committee is a group of people and the girl is all alone. The soldier hoped more than one person would come out to help them. I am sorry, said the girl. Everyone in town is very busy right now with their own work. They cannot feed you. Well then, said Lucas, we shall have to feed ourselves. He reached down to the ground and picked up a large stone near his feet. We shall make stone soup. We make it all the time where I come from. Stone soup? Asked the girl. But You can't make soup from nothing but stones. Of course you can, said Lucas. Stone soup is the best soup in the world. And the best part is that all we need to make it are 3 large stones and a large pot of water. What would happen if they put stones in a pot of hot water? Did you say nothing? Would it make soup? What would it taste like? Did you say it might taste yucky, like dirt? Here is a stone, said George. And another here, said Henry. Perfect, said Lucas. Then if we could just find a large iron pot, we could make the soup ourselves, and we wouldn't be a bother to anyone. I know where we can get a pot, said the girl. She ran to the blacksmith's shop, but she didn't even have to knock. The blacksmith had been listening through the door. I am curious about this stone soup, he said. I'll lend you a pot. He and the girl carried it out to the town square. Why did the blacksmith give the soldiers a pot when he said he wouldn't help them before? Did you say because now he is quite curious about this stone soup? Excellent, said Lucas. Now we just need to fill the pot with water and we'll start our stone soup cooking. We won't have to bother anyone else. Several people popped out of their houses, and shops carrying buckets of water, they dumped the water into the pot. The carpenter popped out of his shop. Do you need some firewood? He asked. He carried an armload of wood to the square and began building a fire. How did the carpenter help the soldiers? That's right. He supplied some wood. George, Henry, and the little girl each dropped a stone into the pot. Everyone stood watching Lucas stir the soup. Mmm, said Lucas. It already smells so delicious, and we really don't need anything else, but do you think it would taste delicious right now? No. But what? Asked the girl. This stone soup looks a tad thin, said Lucas. Stone soup is best when it has a bit of barley and some meat in it. I have some barley, said the baker, popping out of his shop. He brought a bowl full of barley and tossed it into the soup. I have a side of beef that I just chopped up, said the butcher. He came out with a plate piled high with cubes of beef and dropped it into the pot. Ah, said Lucas, stirring and sniffing. The soup looks much better now. But oh dear. What? Asked the townspeople. This stone soup would be even better with a little onion and a bit of salt. The grocer, or the storekeeper who sells food, brought onions and salt. Other townspeople turned up carrying a few items from their homes: potatoes, turnips, carrots, and celery. All of these were chopped up and tossed in the pot. Now, do you think the soup would taste good? Some of you probably still said no, and others might now have said yes. If you said no, Why do you think the soup still will not taste good? Because it still had stones in it? If you said yes, why do you think it would taste good now? Did you say because of all of the extra flavorful ingredients they put in? Excellent, said Lucas. He stirred, sniffed, and then took a little taste. He stood up straight. All the townspeople watched and waited. Finally, Lucas said, "It is perfect." The townspeople sighed with pleasure. "Except," said Lucas, "I forgot one very important thing." "What? What? The townspeople asked. "Stone soup is best when it is shared." Why do you think the soldiers chose to share their soup? Did you say because everybody in town helped in some way to make the soup? The townspeople cheered. They brought out tables and chairs. They brought out bowls and cups and spoons. They brought out fresh apple cider, loaves of crusty bread, and fig pies. They talked and laughed with the soldiers and ate and ate and ate. They ate every last bit of stone soup, all except the 3 stones, which sat at the bottom of the pot. "Thank you for teaching us to make stone soup," said the girl. She peered or stared into the pot. "But the stones are still there. Why didn't they get cooked into the soup?" "That's odd," said Lucas. He winked at the girl and whispered, "Perhaps you were right in the first place. Perhaps you can't make soup from stones after all." Was the girl right after all? Which ingredients made the pot of water into soup? Those were all great responses, you said. With their stomachs full and spirits or moods raised, the 3 soldiers waved goodbye to the little girl and the townspeople, and they continued on their long march home. Who was the only townsperson who wanted to feed the soldiers? Did you say the little girl? Who supplied the iron pot? The blacksmith. Who brought wood for the fire? Did you remember the carpenter? Who ate the stone soup? Did you say the soldiers and the townspeople? Why did the other tradespeople say they wouldn't help feed the soldiers at first? They were too busy. They did not have enough food for their own families. Why did the townspeople start bringing food to the soldiers when they said they wouldn't before? They were curious about stone soup. What ingredients went into the soup? They put in barley, meat, onions, salt, carrots, potatoes, turnips. Why were the stones left in the pot? Stones don't cook. They aren't edible. When did the story take place? A long time ago or modern day? It took place a long time ago. Mrs. Johnston hopes that you enjoyed the last story of this unit called Stone Soup.